So good, so good, so good.
New fall arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off Vince, Kurt Geiger London, and more.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Because there's always something new.
Join the Nordy Club at Nordstrom Rack to unlock exclusive discounts on your favorite brands. Shop new arrivals first and more. Plus, get an extra 5% off every Rack purchase with a Nordstrom credit card. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
Abercrombie denim is everything right now. Denim should feel like this. Confident, easy, like your butt has never looked better. If you didn't know, Abercrombie's Curve Love denim went viral in 2019 for eliminating waist gap, and it's still a game changer. Between that and their classic fits with a straighter line from waist to hip, the perfect denim does exist. Shop Abercrombie denim in the app, online, and in store.
You are listening to Women's Running Stories, where exceptional women runners share inspirational stories about their running experiences.
Hi, my name is Nadia Ruiz. I'm born and raised in LA.
Yes, this episode features Nadia Ruiz, who is an LA native and a hugely prolific runner with a special fondness for the marathon. This is a love that began when she was a teenager. Running has been a steady source of strength, empowerment, and self-confidence, as well as healing. The sport has seen her through good times and also through some dark moments. Up to today, when Nadia is hitting new highs in the sport in her 40s. But before we hear more from Nadia, I want to welcome you to Women's Running Stories. I am Cherie Louise Turner, and I am the host and producer of this podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Nadia has an incredible story, so let's get into it. Nadia Ruiz has a long history with the marathon, as well as many other distances. She has run everything from 5Ks to ultras. She runs on the roads and she runs on the trails. And she has also been a triathlete. Nadia loves to train and to race. And she races a lot. In marathons alone, she has completed over 160. And she was the youngest person ever to run 100 marathons, and she remains the youngest Latina to reach that mark. She did that in 2013. Nadia is also a running coach, and she is an uplifting, influential presence on social media. She's also well known for sharing her running journey with her father. He has been running with her since the very beginning, and he continues to run with Nadia to this day. Now, Nadia has been performance-minded in her running and racing throughout her running career. She aims to be the best she can be at whatever she puts her mind to, in running and beyond. And Nadia has thrived. But she has also experienced her fair share of challenges, and she has navigated some very dark days, including a time when alcohol use became destructive. With those times now years in the past, Nadia's running journey continues to evolve, and she continues to go after big goals, including recently running a lifetime PR at age 40. And she's going to share it all. So let's get into it. Now here to tell her story, starting with her first marathon, is Nadia Ruiz.
So my first marathon was at age 14. It was at the 1999 Los Angeles Marathon. And I was inspired to do that marathon because I didn't know of any other races at that moment. But I was inspired to do the marathon because a few reasons. One, my dad he's always been into just like most men, watching sports and into sports. And whenever you see somebody that looks like you or a similar background of you, there's like a connection to it. And he was spectating the Los Angeles Marathon a few years prior. I believe in maybe early 90s when it was an Ecuadorian that actually won the LA Marathon. And so it was really special to watch my dad just be filled with emotion, to see someone from his homeland. Both my parents are immigrants. I was born and raised in LA, but I was made in Ecuador, and we had a very, very humble beginnings. And so just seeing that person, like, you connect with that person that crosses the finish line. And my dad was filled with tears, and we actually went to go cheer in person. And I was just like, that pride and that joy. I was like, that is such a beautiful thing to witness, and to see my parents feel with my dad. So I don't know why, but it actually just got imprinted in me. And I was like, I want to make my dad that proud. Like, and I wasn't an athlete. I had two left feet. My parents tried to put me into like soccer, basketball, community sports, just like normal like athletic development in kids, that as you should, and just to explore what your talents are. And I had none. I had no athletic talent, and I mean, I tried. Like I have an older sister and a younger brother, and they were both like started young too when they were like 4, 5, 6, and they were great. They were like just average kids, great in basketball, soccer, and played like baseball, and I could not. I just don't know what it was. So my parents just were like, okay, maybe she's just into the crafts and arts and cultural arts, and I did. I actually competed really well. I was very competitive in math and academic competitions, in art competitions, and I was always driven to try to see what is my best, always, 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 and that was instilled from my parents. So kind of going back to like why LA and why the marathon distance, it was just that feeling of seeing my dad so proud. I'm like, I want to make my dad proud. And fast forward when I was in middle school, finally I was getting bullied in middle school, and my mom's like, well, I want you to be able to take care of yourself and defend yourself in case something happens. I'm not saying to go out there and pick fights, but she enrolled me in boxing, and that's kind of where I discovered I had an engine. And that's kind of where our indigenous like bloodline comes from. Is my parents are from Quito and Loja. Quito is the capital of Ecuador, and it sits at 9,000 feet altitude. And it's just in our blood to be mountain people. It's in my bloodline. I have Incan roots in my line, and I really, really do strongly. But there is no DNA test. I gotten DNA tested and just kind of see, and there's nothing to say like maybe right now genetic factors that this is why you're an endurance machine, but by the bloodlines, like we're just out there, almost like the Tarahumara out in Mexico in the Copper Canyons. It's like this is kind of a culture out there in the mountains. Like that's all you do is move, and all you do, and you don't know about the sport of running, but that's labor. It's movement. It's simple life. So I was like, there's something in me like I can move. Like so I'd never realized it wasn't maybe that team sports wasn't my thing, but it was endurance. Like I could just go, and the feeling that I got, I loved just moving and running. And that's where in middle school I had a math teacher who was running, and he was very like tall and skinny, and he's like, oh, yeah, I run the LA Marathon. I was like, huh, interesting. Okay, my dad, he was cheering at it. My middle school teacher is like, he looks like this, and he runs the LA Marathon. So once I started high school, my freshman year, that's when one senior cross country runner, he was signing up for the LA Marathon. I'm like, that's it. I'm doing the LA Marathon. This is just like I see it, and again, I didn't know anything outside of. I didn't know there was half marathon races. I didn't know there was 5K, 10Ks. I didn't know, like, I just knew what I knew in my circle, in my bubble. And this is like pre social media, pre like internet's just kind of starting. So, I was like, huh, okay. So I signed up for the LA Marathon, and it was 99. It was just after having one cross country season under my belt. So, cross country back then, we probably only running about 5 miles max, and you do a bunch of speed workouts as a young kid. And so I sat my parents down just a couple weeks before the race, and I told them I signed up, I'm going to do it, I'm inspired, I want to try to this is a stepping stone, because I had been inspired by Ironman World Championship because I saw that on TV. I'm like, I want to do this because I want to prove to myself that I can do it, and I know I can. And again, this is just like the being naive and not knowing fully what it entails. So my dad was like, he was inspired that his 14-year-old daughter was going to do this, and he was 40 years old at the time. He's like, okay, I'm going to sign up with my daughter, and he signed up as well. He had no running background as either, but he had a soccer background. So he was in a competing in adult leagues, and he also coached my younger brother. He was really really good. So there's that engine of the athlete in him and the mindset, and that's kind of where I learned my mindset. I've learned my mindset right now. Like it's that whole mindset arena, and but back then you didn't call it really mindset, you called it sports psychology, and that's kind of what it is. And my dad taught that to me very early on, and I learned really like 14-year old, like, okay, the visualization, and this is how you hone in on it, and this is how you change that inner dialogue, and this is how you shape it, and it is your nervous system. You're reshaping your thoughts, and you're reshaping your brain, and you're connecting it to, your physical training. So my dad and I signed up, and we had 2 weeks to go, and so no long runs, no knowledge of like endurance shoes. I we wore My dad wore a cotton t-shirt. We wore like just regular like shorts, and I wore my jersey from my cross country team. And I was like, well, this is kind of what you don't know anything about fueling. You don't know anything about like nothing. And we towed up the line, and I was like, okay, just full of heart, and like, I can do this. If there's thousands of people on the starting line, like, I could do it too. They could do it. I could do it too. Uh, of course, you're full of joy and adrenaline, and I started running, and I hit the wall at mile 12. It was like a extreme. I don't know what it was, but it just completely wave of fatiguing and cramping and pain, and I was like, oh my goodness. And I literally just had to sit down, and I started crying out of physical pain. But I mostly, that cry started to transform into defeat. And I felt like I just, not that I had like I was like I was over my head, and I thought I gave up, and I thought that, like, I was like, this is not the time. Maybe if I should show up and train, and maybe next time. Well, my dad kneeled next to me and said, he's like, Mika, that if you believe in yourself and I believe in yourself, we're going to cross this line together. So you got to put one foot in front of the other, believe you can do this, and with your mind, you can do anything. And I was like, okay, dad, okay. So I stood up with him, and we, like, literally, he never shows pain to me. And to this day, like, he is now, as it says, a 67-year-old man, he carries a lot of chronic pain from just his trade and his career. And he wouldn't show anything. Like, he'd be like, let's go, you could do this, I believe in you, and we're going to do this together. So it was that extreme power of someone who loves you and cares for you, that believes in you, that guy that kind of just transforms into you, and like, I have to believe in myself, I have to do this, and I need to do this for myself and prove to myself that I can. So we trotted along, and I mean, the physical pain doesn't go away, but something clicks mentally. And once you shift mentally, like, not in a negative talk, negative thoughts, you push those out, and you make yourself think about positive thoughts and more empowering thoughts, you propel yourself in a different way. So it's almost like you can endure the physical pain differently. And I learned that, like, that moment. And so I was able to push and literally kind of almost stay on pace without slowing down, even though it excruciatingly hurt more and more and more. So we crossed our first finish line in 4 hours and 5 minutes. I don't know how we did that without training, without anything. It's literally just taking it in mentally. And to this day, we know how to run races mentally. So he had taken my hand, and we crossed that finish line crying in tears, and it was tears of pain, but it was tears of joy. Like, wow, we did this, and we proved to ourselves that we did it. And at that moment, it was another wave of empowerment. Like, if I could do this, I could do anything. And at that point, I fell in love with the distance, and I fell in love with endurance running. And so my dad and I have been now racing together for 28 years. So knowing this, that I fell in love with the marathon, I did approach my cross country and track coaches, and they told me, like, look, right now is the time for you to focus on your speed. You're young. You have the rest of your life to do marathons and go far and beyond. And then I kind of already knew a little bit about ultras, very, very, very small world at that moment in the 90s. And so he's like, let's just, if you promise me just to do one marathon a year, you can do LA. After that, once you're done with, you can then decide in college if you want to be competitive in college, because you don't know yet. You're still exploring your running career. And then when you're done with college, then see where you want to go with that. And I was like, okay, fair enough. So I'll only do one marathon a year, and during those 4 years in high school. And same thing, I decided in college that I wasn't going to compete in college. I was going to focus on my professional development, my academic development. And I was like, because no matter what, there's only a very small percentage of runners who actually become pro. And especially back then, I already knew that. So I was like, I'm not going to rely on becoming a pro runner. I'm going to build my career and then run. I want to run. And I knew how much I loved running. That was the thing, is like, I love running so much that I want to run for the rest of my life. And that was my life goal. As soon as I had crossed that finish line, I go, I want this feeling when I'm 40, 50, 60, 80, like just to move and just to feel what I feel when I run. So that's why I only stuck to one marathon a year in high school, in undergrad, and graduate school. And then once I finished graduate school, like I had my career, I was in my classroom, I was teaching high school biology by the age of 21. I was just always competitive. I was competitive in the classroom and then at university, and I was competitive also like on the field. So once I finished, that's where I was like, well, now I have a little bit of play money. I also graduated debt free. I worked really hard in undergrad and grad school. So now that I was teaching, I was like, well, let me go ahead and take care of my finances. Let me go ahead and now use this money to explore. There are other races. That's where I started traveling and doing different races around the city, around California, like Big Sur and Northern California, and then San Diego. Then I was like, oh, there's different races in other states, and so I went to other states. And then I started then learning more and more of like other like countries. I'm like, oh, this is such a beautiful, like, I go, this is a universal language, like running. No matter where you go, it makes everyone feel this extreme amount of joy. And I love to connect with people anywhere I go with this language of running. So I only kept it one a year for the first 7 years. And then I did 5, 6, 7, 10. And at that point, it was probably like 2008, 2009. And I was in my mid 20s. And I learned about the Marathon Maniacs. And this was a group that was still young at that point and not that big. It was only a couple thousand, like, nationwide runners, online community. And they're like, we basically love to marathon, we love to travel, and we love to connect with each other. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Like, there are other crazy people out there who love to do what I do. So that's kind of what helped propel me to just explore more marathons and do more. And I started racing a lot, and my body was just well taken care of. And people were like, what is it what are you on? I'm like, I'm on happiness. Like, honestly, I'm on happiness. I'm happy to train. I'm happy to work. I go to work happy. I do what I love on the weekends, and just probably up to like racing, it was 20 races a year, 30 races a year. And I mean, sometimes I got up to like almost 40. And, it's just something that was part of, some people like going to concerts, and I love to go to races. And, there was no, like, again, I wasn't even on social media yet. So people think that this whole influencer thing was always who I was. It's like, no, no, no. This happened only after the pandemic, really. Like, I've always been like a hardworking woman, and it's just very different post pandemic. Um, that's where I was collecting marathons, and I think I was around like fifth, almost 60, where I don't know how I had Googled it, and the Guinness Book of World Records of the youngest woman to run 100 marathons came up, and it was held at that moment by a British woman who was 34 years old. And I was still in my mid 20s. I was like, huh, wait a minute. I could break this world record if I just stay on track the way I am, as long as, one, I stay healthy, two, I don't get pregnant, because that'll sideline me for a year. And then three, I quietly go after this record, because there was also this other female who was around my age at the time, 6 months younger, who was racing as often as I was, and we were pretty similar. And the difference only was is that she loved to just walk her marathons. So she participated like on 2 marathons a weekend, and I would always like go race them, and I would always want to aim to like Boston qualify. So I mean, I'm also like a teacher, a coach, and my philosophy has always been I want you to try your best. Like if you're going to go out there and do something, like when you show up to a race, like you go out there and give whatever you have. So a very different philosophy. And again, I was like, well, we're kind of on the same track, so I'm going to just quietly see what happens. So about for 2 years, I quietly continued to do what I was doing, and didn't sidetrack. And that's when, once I knew that I was about like 5 marathons away, and I knew I was ahead, I was like, I'm going to go after this record. That's where I went to media. I went to ABC, and I went to a couple like KTLA. And I was like, I'm on the countdown. I'm on the last three. And so I finished like the last three, and there was like that momentum of building up. So my dad and I, we had ran my 100th marathon at the San Francisco Marathon in July of 2013. And we had, oh, actually it was June that year. They had moved it because of some baseball, something with the MLB. And we ran it together hand by hand, just like my first marathon. And that year my father had just lost his mom, he had just lost his dad, and he had also lost his dog. And so he was carrying a lot of emotional pain with him. And he ran with like a photo of his dad on because he had lost him from cancer. And it was an emotional moment, a very emotional moment to cross that finish line again with my dad. And what's crazy was 3 marathons prior to my 100th, I actually had woken up one race morning and I had stubbed my toe, and I fractured it. I fractured a pinky. So I had ran those last 3 marathons like literally 2 hours slower than my normal time, and just with a fractured. I was like, I cannot not run because I already went public. So it was beautiful. It was a beautiful, beautiful moment, and I crossed it and broke the world record. And it was just something very special. And I think at that point, I was like, wow, it's wild to have come this far and never realized, and never was it a goal. Never was it a goal to think about doing 100 marathons. Never was it a goal to like break the world record, or do it for this long. And then just the beauty of loving the process. And that's kind of what I tell my athletes in my community is like, it's not about one race, and it's not about one race result. It's the transformation that happens while you're getting there. That's the beautiful thing. And the every day that you show up for yourself, every day that you like when you struggle, like, or the good days, the bad days, like just everything that is. And that's why I'm in what I'm in for so long, because I love training. I love just feeling what I feel on a regular basis because it helps give me clarity.
Nadia's love of running and racing continued after she reached this huge milestone of completing 100 marathons. And she continued to focus on performing as well as she was able whenever she raced. As had been the case for her entire life, Nadia remained purpose-driven in her running and the rest of her life. But difficulties and traumas began to accumulate over time, and things came to a head during the pandemic. It's a period of Nadia's life that she has spent a lot of time processing.
Now that I've reflected on it, and I continue to reflect on it, it wasn't just what was happening in 2020, 2021. And I mean, we all were being challenged in a very, very difficult period, and in the world, what was happening in the world, and for all of us. But I was at first labeling like I lost my business, I lost my finances, had gone out of a narcissistic relationship for that was a year that had just made me codependent. I had gotten out of a very toxic work contract. It was very extremely toxic with sexism, and I mean, my colleague and I, we were about to even like get lawyers, but we were going over a big worldwide brand, and they told us like it's going to be extremely, extremely difficult to fight like that, so sexism charges. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to leave everything. This is now January 2020. I'm going to just move on, let it go. The relationship's gone. The toxic work environment's gone. And I was ready to move forward. And then I ended up getting attacked by a German Shepherd, and I'm a huge dog person, and that I think unlocked something mentally that was probably carrying inside of me for like 10 years, from age 30 to like, oh, at that point it was, I guess, 35, 36. And it unlocked something where I was like, what is happening? Like, I started getting night terrors and I couldn't sleep. I've never had problem with sleep. My body started having extreme stress reactions and hives, and this was all like January to March. And of course, everything for us in Southern California just kind of shut down in March. So I'm being challenged and going to the doctor. I'm like, what is going on? And at this point, when once lockdowns happened in March, I was in isolation. I lost like any try to like therapy. I lost any like resources like trying to help me. I was like, I completely was isolated. On top of it, losing my business, I was a public speaker. I used to work at events. I used to do event production, all of that. Again, this is prior to like the whole influencer hat. And I just was like, what did I do wrong? I've worked hard my entire life. And here I am now tapping into my savings and losing, you know, everything, completely lost. And for the first time in my life, I basically lost purpose. And I never not had that in my life, ever. I was a person that woke up with joy even if there was stresses, and that's is where I had unpacked basically from age 30 to 36. There was reckless behavior and there was trauma happening, and there was things I was unlocking from my maybe my 20s and unlocking from my childhood, and just things that you don't recognize. You just kind of move on. You move on to the next stage of your life, and you don't think about it and reflect about it. And you're like, okay, it's just a life challenge. That's all it is. Just move on, and we go to the next thing, go to the next thing, go to the next thing. And that's kind of like what happened at once, being in isolation, like in that darkness. And what that starts to compound into is a very heavy weight of emotional pain and mental pain, and you start to spiral into a very dark circle. And what's worse is we were all isolated in a certain way, and I was isolated in a very dark place, and it kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. And what happens is we start to try to mask the emotional pain, and we try to mask the mental pain. We try to mask these things, and I know it became very dark, and to the point where when I lost that purpose, and it wouldn't, and because we had no outlook, and I couldn't get any work, I couldn't get any income, I couldn't, like, there was nothing, like, oh, no outlook. It was months that was passing by, to the point where, like, I lost hope. And like my name means hope. Like the roots and origins of Nadia is hope, and I've always held on to that because I learned that early on, and I'm like, I am a source of hope. I'm a source of hope for myself first, then I'm a source of hope for my family. I'm a source of hope for my community. I'm a source of hope for community outreach, because I've always done like community outreach, again, prior to social media. So I I was in a dark place and falling fast, and to the point where um, it's a scary place to know that you don't want to wake up anymore. Like, and then you started to do things to not wake up anymore. Like, you don't want to wake up anymore, and you hope that it's this time that you do something that's not going to allow you to wake up because you just don't want to. And I, barely several moments of like that, and I was scared, but I was so much pain. And I didn't know how to reach out to like my parents. I didn't know, and again, they were always there. My parents have always loved me. My siblings have always loved me. My siblings can see the pain that I was going through. Like, Nadia, we're here. Like, you have people there that love you and saying, like, we're here. Like, because they know I lost my business. They know I lost everything, and so they're like, just hold on, just hold on. If you need help, and like, I'm like, no, like, it's almost like you can't say anything to a person in that moment, because when they lose purpose, it's something that's very scary. It's very scary. Um, so this happened for about a year of darkness, a very dark time, and fortunately, Tony, my partner, came into my life at the end of like 2020, which was such a weird time to like meet and fall in love, because not only were we in like COVID and we couldn't do anything, but he came to me with such warmth and such love as a stranger to me, and I was like, I am in the worst period of my life. I am so broken. And I knew also, like, not only like I was broken from this darkness that I was going through in 2020, but I had already started reflecting on like what was happening the couple years before. And I told him like, oh, this is not the time like for me to be in a relationship. This is not the time. I go, but why are you interested? Or why do you? And I guess because he knew of me on social and knew the light I would bring. And he's like, I know this isn't you. Like, it's like just, and he would hold me. He would hold me. And oh, for sometimes if like a stranger holds you and I started to fall in love. I'm like, oh my gosh. And that's what's crazy. It's like, it's crazy that your parents and your siblings who love you and really, really are trying to help you, but you block them out. That's why when someone is in that place, like it's you can never judge them. You can never judge them, like, and say like, you have kids, you have a partner, you have this, like, why are you like feeling this way? But it's sometimes it's a stranger that comes in and saves you. And like, Tony's love like saved me. And it almost gave me that little hope, like, oh my gosh, this man loves me and this is who I am. It's like, man, like this, if he loves me at my absolute worst, he's gonna really love me when I'm at my best. So, um, I think that's what helped me hold on. But I still wasn't out of the darkness because when I wasn't with him, I was still hurting myself, and I was still trying to end myself. And we talk about this now, and I'm like, did you know I had a problem? And he's like, I did. I just didn't know how to. And he approached me once about it, and he's like, do you want to talk about it? I'm like, no, I don't have a problem. Like, I would shut him out. Like, what are you talking about? I don't have a problem. And but he was there. So like the love helped me. The switch that was really the last switch was when I was taking it out of my body as well. I was running, I doubled and tripled my mileage, and I was running like 90-mile weeks, 100-mile weeks. And so of course, if you're not taking care of your body, you're not getting nutrients in, and you're taking toxic substances, your body's going to break. And that's exactly what happened. I tore my meniscus. I have a bucket handle tear on January 2021. So now we're like a year later, and at that point, I couldn't walk. I couldn't walk without pain for about 6 months. And here, remember, like, this is when surgeries were backlogged, still 2021. So I went to the hospital and I told them, I go, I need this surgery. This is the only thing I have like that right now is to run. And they're like, sorry, you're not essential. Like, literally, that's what I kind of was told. Like, at the hospital, like, you're not essential. We'll put you on the wait list and we'll just wait. I was like, okay. So fortunately, I had a PT who was very kind, Nori. He reached out. He's like, let's go ahead and prehab you. We'll just prehab and prepare you for surgery so that hopefully when you come out on the other side, we'll see what it looks like on the other side. I was like, okay. So we did that for about 8 months. And I still was not like on the wait list for the surgery until a point where that's where fall races events started happening, the big ones towards the end of 2021 in the fall. That's where Boston came, LA Marathon came, all of the big ones started to get their permits, and we're like, okay, let's do it in a modified way. So that's when I'm like, well, I don't want to lose my streak for LA Marathon and Boston. I'm going to go ahead and run them. And I took a trip with my dad. It was the first trip. We went to Ecuador for my birthday in September. And that was the first time where I said, I'm going to try to go clean. I need to fix this. Like, because the doctors, you can't lie to your doctors. If you lie to your doctors, then you're going to hurt yourself. And that's where I told them, I need help. I need help. Like, now I'm at the point where I have a man that loves me. I'm trying to like get out of this, and I'm like, I don't know how to get out because now there is a physical addiction to it. And there's a reliance on it. Now it's not just psychological. So here I am now trying to figure out how to get out of it without trying to go public. Like, I didn't want to like tell my parents and tell my siblings, and I wasn't ready. So the doctor's like, well, you can go into seizure if you just stop. Like, and it's like I couldn't find the help that I needed, and I was like, what is going on? Like, so where did I go? I just ran the marathon. Like, I just, with the pain that I had, like, I'm gonna try to go clean. I'm gonna run Boston first, and then an LA Marathon came at the end of 2021. Um, and I did. I started clean, but this was like the first time where I had relapsed hard. It was a month later, and it was at the morning of the Boston Marathon. That's where I had my two dogs, my two senior dogs. I had a 14-year-old Labrador Max, and I had a 12-year-old boxer Bruno. And these are the dogs that first dogs that I adopted after I had graduated grad school, and they grew up with me in my 20s, and I had them in my early 30s. So that's all I had. Those were my kids. Those were my boys. Those are my children. And I would talk to my dogs. I would all the pains that I had, I'd share everything that I had with them. I knew they were going to go, and because they were seniors, and my dad called me on Boston Marathon morning, and that's what he told me. He's like, Max passed away. And my boy, and so that's my son. And it's still hard to this day because I adore him and I love him. And I felt like he knew the pain that I was going through because he lived two very painful years, those last 2 years. And I have guilt. I have guilt because I felt like I held on to him too long for me because I was going through pain and I was in such a dark place in my life and I just needed my dog. And he just couldn't hold on anymore. So that's when people reached out to me online. The online community helped out. They're like, Max was so strong because I shared Max a lot online. I took him to my work events a lot, and so a lot of people knew him. A lot of people like met him and connected with him over the years, and they mourned him too. And they're like, that he couldn't go while you were there, and he had to go when you were not there, because it's just you're gonna meet him one day. So that was the hard part. Like I relapsed hard, and I had like 2 hard months until it was crazy. Is my boxer I knew was gonna go. He basically clicked, and 6 weeks later, he just I did a bunch of blood tests, but he just wanted to join Max, and I wanted to not have him have a hard passing, and so I had to say goodbye to my Bruno, and that was it. That was the pain. Once they were both gone right after the holidays. I'm like, that's it. If I ever want to see my boys again, I need to fix myself. And ever since then, it's been out of my life completely, completely clean. I think because the world started to try to normalize and try to open up again, that helped because now we're looking at the end of it was December 29th, 2021, when I had gone on a walk with Tony and I had my third dog, which I have right now, Buster. We went on a walk and I was like, I told myself like this is it. Like I didn't tell Tony anything. I didn't. I was like, just all for me. Like I'm gonna do it one day at a time because I knew I had relapsed so hard, but I knew that this was a restart, and it was really just professing of like I want to see my dogs again, and if I want to see my dogs again, I need to be a good person, and that has to start with being a good person to me again. If I'm not a good person to me again, how can I help serve others? And that was just a reinvention of myself, and running is that vehicle. It's not only just the running therapy, as a lot of us have categorized it, but it's that vehicle of how can I do good again, do good for others, but it has to start with yourself. Like you gotta, I know it's this cliche thing of like self-love and you have to love yourself first, but it's about really pouring into your cup first in order for you to pour into other people's cup. And my cup was far beyond an empty, far beyond, and I had nothing else to serve because I wasn't serving myself. So the world was opening up in different ways in 2022, and that's kind of how I was able to kind of get work again, and that repurpose again. But it was also the renewed purpose in my own heart that I had created in myself by losing my two dogs. And it wasn't just my two dogs, it was everything that led up to that moment, that of all the loss that I had experienced. And not only, here's where I at that moment I thought it was the loss that I had felt for the last couple years, but through this journey, a sobriety journey of these 4 years, is where I've realized like, it wasn't just that loss then. It was the loss that I hadn't addressed, that I had felt maybe at 35 or at 30. And just thinking that it was something minor, but it wasn't minor because I was carrying it with me. And like there's a book out there that says the body keeps a score, and it really does. It really does carry that along with you in different stages of your life if you don't unpack it. And we have to unpack it. And the longer we carry it, the more unpacking we have to do. I mean, if you think about, you don't have to necessarily be a hoarder in a house, but if you think about a home, and a home, when a person living in a home in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you just accumulate things. Think about all the tangible things you have. And people don't realize that the things that they have until they have to move. Once they have to unpack physically the things that they have, and they're like, whoa, I got a lot of junk. I got a lot of important stuff. I got a lot of not important stuff, and there's a lot of junk. And that's kind of what our mind is we collect all of these memories from our life, and if we don't unpack it, it gets all like it tangled in there. So like 2022, just kind of going through my life again and reinventing myself and working again in events and reopening my coaching business again because events started happening. That's kind of where I was able to work, and then I started getting hired for projects, and it's like, okay, there's a sense of purpose and renewal. So it was just taking it one day at a time. I personally would say, like, I told everyone, I'm like, oh, I'm not drinking for the LA Marathon 3 months away. That was kind of my public, because it's also like, how does the public perceive it? It's crazy. Like, if you do a 30-day challenge, everyone applauds you for that. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go dry January. I'm gonna do dry October, whatever it is. But once you start to say, like, no, I don't drink, like, I gave it up, people just automatically like, oh, what's wrong with you? Like, oh, or like, you're no fun. And I did have a couple friends, like, well-meaning friends, that would be like, oh, you're no fun anymore. It's like, and then after a while, once they realize, like, I'm so sorry I said that. Like, I am so sorry. It didn't come out the right way. I'm like, oh, no, no, no. I totally understand. Like, that's the public persona that you have. Fortunately, it's now way more accepted. Like, now that we're 4 years or 5 years after the pandemic, because now you hear people, a lot of people actually, they're like, yeah, I decided to give up alcohol. Like a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, because a lot of people were struggling and they were resulting to an unhealthy habit. And it gets triggered in different ways in different people. So that's kind of what I tell people, is like, I had a healthy relationship with alcohol when I was in my 20s, because I didn't have the trauma or that I was collected later on in my life. So I only had a glass of wine like once a month, maybe, whenever it was a nice dinner, or whenever, like, it was something, a very positive association with it. Never did I result to it. Never did I have to come home from work like, oh, that was such a tough day from work, I need a drink. That is not the right place to say I need a drink. Like, oh, I just need to get away from my screaming kids for a moment, I need a drink. Like, that is not the right place to, like, resort to. We're so hyper wired. Our nervous system really is so hyper wired that that's why we're resulting to these suppressants that just help us calm our nervous system down. Whereas there are other ways. It's not immediate like a drink. It's, you have to do breath work, you have to do meditation, maybe journaling. There's things that we can do that will help us, and it's an ongoing process because we're constantly going to be bombarded with chronic stress or traumatic events that happen to us in our lives. So that's kind of how, like, running has been able to re-blossom and allowed me to use it as a vehicle of passing my message, not with the sense of, like, you should give up alcohol. No, no, no. Like, it's just, how are you addressing what's weighing you down today, and how can we maybe address it a little bit better? Could it be a run? Could it be a walk? Could it be some breath work? Could it be just little simple things that we can do to help take care of our mind?
Solidly on a path of healing and reinvention, Nadia refocused on racing well, and she decided to go after a big PR. It was a process that was years in the making.
In reality, the focus was for 3 years. So for me, like, my meniscus tear in January 2021, there is pre-meniscus tear and there's post-meniscus tear in my running career. And that's kind of where I shape things. And so before 2021, my running was in different phases. So, like, let's call it, high school was competitive short distances. College running was not competitive at all. I actually had gained 40 pounds, and then I had slowed down 2 hours in my marathon. So I struggled. And it wasn't until I was in grad school where I wanted to retake my health again. And so I had lost 20 of those 40 pounds and then started to train again and take care of myself again to be competitive in Boston qualify. So again, I'm not talented. I just like to work. I love the process. I love to work hard for my training and for my health. So then after grad school, that's where I was racing frequently, but I got into triathlons. So my 20s was my triathlon era. So I was focusing on Ironmans. I did 5 Ironmans. I did 14 half Ironmans, and I was doing that. So marathon distance was never the focus. So if you want to PR in it, you want to make breakthroughs, you should focus on one distance. And my era, my 20s, was the triathlon. After that, at 30 is where now I started to develop, I guess the trauma was starting to develop, where I had a life stage shift where uh, I got divorced, and I completely lost all my future dreams with this person, and I thought that that was going to be it. And so what did I end up doing? And what do a lot of people do is they start to go into something that was denied from them maybe in that previous relationship. And so I went to ultra running. So right at 30, I was like, well, I'm going to go disappear in the mountains now. And I'm going to, because I couldn't disappear when I was in my 20s. Like triathlon training is very easy to kind of, not very easy, sorry. It's easier to stay at sea level and stay close to home when you're training around work and around relationships and around family and social. Whereas ultra running, you can't. You go disappear for hours at a time. And some of the time, a lot of the time, you actually disappear out of service too, if you're properly ultra training. So that's kind of what happened is like from 30 to 35, I kind of went reckless because I was such a disciplined professional person and professional woman that I was driven in my finances, I was driven in my hobbies, I was driven in my relationship, I was driven in everything, that I wasn't out there partying or I wasn't out there clubbing. I never had a wild phase. I didn't have a wild phase in my teens. I didn't have a wild phase in my 20s. I was living in my 20s, I was living like 30s or maybe 40s. And so by the time I hit 30s, I found a new group of friends, a new group of circle of friends. I'm like, oh, everybody's partying. Like, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm now single. And of course, I've never been on dating apps. I've never like understood that because I actually organically met my ex through just meeting a one-on-one a human being at a place. So I was like, well, let's go ahead and reckless in a different way. I was partying and I was racing hard. I was still young in my young 30s, and I was also ultra training. That's where that focus was, just ultra. And I became a very strong mountain runner. And again, my bloodline comes from 9,000 feet altitude in Quito. So I love mountains. I love the feeling. And I found a new rhythm. I'm like, I'm good at this. Let's go ahead and, just let's go into this. And I did that for about 5 years. But at the same time, I was also still racing in the roads, but it came secondary. So I was still marathoning, came secondary, half marathons, marathon. Then I was still Boston qualifying because I was training specifically for mountain running. And then around 35, 36 is when the pandemic happened. And so this is when I tore my meniscus. And so uh, that's where I met Tony, and he introduced me to triathlon again. He's like, he reignited that fire again. He's like, because he's a triathlete. He's very competitive and disciplined in triathlon. He's like, look, cycling is going to save you. I'm like, I know, like, I know. So I got back into cycling. He made me upgrade my bike. I bought a new toy, and he's like, you deserve it. Like, just go buy yourself a nice, like, you don't buy yourself good, like, nice things. Go spend your money. I'm like, okay, okay. So I got into triathlon again, and that kind of got my fitness up again in a different way. And now this is post meniscus tear. So here in Giant 21, I felt like my running was over. You think that when you have a minor injury, you think your running is over. When you have a bucket handle tear, you think your running career is over. You're never going to be able to run distances or mountains or anything. Like that was it for me. I was like, all I want to do is be able to jog again. Please get me jogging. Because I went basically 8 months just walking. All I did was walk and like baby hikes and prehab with my PT. So once I started to run again towards the end of 2021, it was a gift. I was like, oh my gosh, I could jog again. Like I could go distance. And then of course I had heartbreak in my heart. That's kind of what helped me propel and run the marathon distance. And I shocked my PT, my physical therapist. He's like, Nadia, I don't know how you did it. I go, well, I'm carrying a lot of pain in my heart. Like that's how I did it. Like it's the heart. It's the heart and the mind that kind of takes me the distance. Like I just go into this flow state. Like once that gun goes off, like it's in a flow. So then it was I want to get back to running competitive, whatever that means. Whatever it means, I'm going to accept it as a gift. So from that point forward, it's like 2022 was a year of coming back to racing. and I started getting stronger again. And again, it was all the prehab, it was all the strength training because I was older at this point, and it was all of the cycling as well. Just a combination of becoming a balanced and coming back, and really, really, really treating my running as a gift. I was like, okay, and as being a coach, like I knew how to shape it. And I had my physical therapist, I had my manual therapist who also helps me, my massage therapist, she helps me as well tremendously. Like this isn't now a maintenance. Like I have to go to PT, I have to get a massage, I have to take care of my body. It is aging, it is collecting miles and years. So 2022 was a beautiful year in the sense of I was in my journey of sobriety. I was in my journey of working and finding purpose again. And I was also in my journey of running competitively again. And for me, so I felt great. I was like, my times were getting close to what they were like 5 years ago and then 10 years ago. And then 2023 was that moment where it was like, holy cow, I'm as fast as I was when I was 10 years younger. That's where I finally got the green flag. I'm like, could I go for a PR? Like, because once I knew at that point, my PR, my half marathon PR and my marathon PR were like 12 years old. And those happened by accident too, because I was in triathlon training in my 20s, in my late 20s. So that's where 2023, I told myself, let's go for it. I'm going to aggressively try to go for it because now I'm healthy. I'm taking care of myself. I'm getting stronger and stronger. So I started to start doing more speed work. And this is where my body doesn't accept it really well because I have so much years in my body. I have 28 years of competition. That's a lot. That works to my advantage mentally, but it also works to my detriment physically because of the wear and tear. So it didn't accept the speed work really well. So I started then to start battling a lot of injuries as far as for niggles, like strains. This was completely new to me, where now I'm not approaching 40. Like, what is going on? I have a strain here, I recover. I have a strain there, I recover. I have a strain here, I recover. And now I understood, like, my older athletes that I train, which I train them really well, but like they also have to be very cautious with like strains. And it's just the physiology of the body as we get older. Like that's why it's different when we train when we're 40s versus 30s or 30s versus 20s or 50s versus 40s. So I was realizing that I'm like, so it was a year of like basically prehabbing all of 2024 again, like trying to reset. I'm like, okay, let's reel it in. Let's do some trail running again. Let's do some mountain running again. And in 2024 is where I for like 6 months, all I did was very, very slow, gradual, just the kind of zone two of volume. And I started to unleash it. This is June of the summer before Chicago and Every Woman's Marathon at the end of 2024, where this PR attempts happened. I start to see, I'm like, okay, I'm healthy again. Let's go for it. So I knew my 40th birthday was coming up, and I'm like, oh, could I do it at 40? Like, could I really? And again, all my focus was on the marathon distance since my meniscus tear. So that's why that the focus was just these 3 years where I'd focused on this PR. I went for the attempt. I now analyzed my training, and I went for the attempt at Chicago, which was last year, Chicago, and I realized I was right there. I had finished in 318, and with the humidity and conditions, that probably took about 2 minutes from me. So essentially, I was like 315, 316, 316 shape at that moment. And I was like, I'm right there with the 315. Fortunately, I was hired to work at the Every Woman's Marathon a month later. So I worked on completely recovering, just recovering that month gap. And I was like, I'm gonna go for it again. I'm gonna go for it again and see what happens. And it was perfect conditions. It wasn't a perfect course because this course had 80 turns versus Chicago has 40 turns. So you're running tangents and you're running a little bit extra. And also, it wasn't a fast field. So I was running the last 20 miles by myself. So it was a real, real huge mental battle. But again, something clicked. I'm like, if I don't do it now and I don't suffer now, I may not have another window. This might be my only window. And who does this PR matter to? It matters to nobody else but me. And that's where you have to allow it to matter for you. We don't gift ourselves enough permission, that permission to say, especially moms. Like I train a lot of moms too. And I remind them how much they have to love themselves and give themselves time because they're so giving to their children. So as women, we're in a position oftentimes, whether it's work, relationship, motherhood, whatever it is, we're always giving to others, and we don't gift enough to ourselves, and that permission of just, this is for me and I'm gonna do it for me, and that's where I clicked mentally. I'm like, I'm going to start this race and I'm going to be uncomfortable from the moment I start, for me, and whatever happens, because I knew that I had the fitness. Of course, you're not going to go blindly and just take off on your race. You have to go with strategy as well. So I knew I had the fitness in me. I actually had the fitness in me at that moment. When I analyzed it, I always bounce ideas off with Tony too. Like, I was at about 312, 313 shape. So what the course took away from me was 2 minutes. It took away from me because of the turns, and also because I was running alone. That took about 2 minutes away. So I ended up running at 3:15, 14. And it was a beautiful feeling to cross the finish line. And even though I felt alone, but I wasn't alone, if that makes sense. And there was an announcer who I know, and she's like, Nadia, oh, it's great to see you. And then, of course, Catherine Switzer was there at the finish line. It was so kind. She had given, and what a place to do it. At a women empowering event where it's all women and you're just being uplifted in the weekend. And I was like, oh. The number one thing that I've learned over time now is continuously evolve. Like, continuously evolve with your journey, and if you evolve in your journey, you learn to love the process. It becomes a beautiful journey. Because now that I'm in my 40s, and I'm thinking, and I reflect back, and I take the time to reflect back. I think about how the relationship I had with life and running in my teens, life and running in my 20s, life and running in my 30s, and now life and running. But it also gives me an outlook of, like, what's my life going to look like, and running look like in 50s and 60s. And so it makes me value right now. It makes me value what I had in the past, and it makes me allow me to be with an open heart with the future.
What an incredible journey. That does bring us to the end of Nadia Ruiz's running story on the podcast. Thank you so much, Nadia, for coming on Women's Running Stories and sharing this journey. Wow. And I know you, like me, are going to want to keep up with Nadia. You can definitely find her on Instagram. Look to the show notes and I will provide links. And that does bring me to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for coming and listening to these stories. I always appreciate you being here. I am Cherie Louise Turner. I'm the host and producer of Women's Running Stories. And until next Tuesday, I do wish you healthy, joyful, ever-evolving strides forward. Women's Running. Women's Running Stories.